Media preservation is something that is very important to a lot of people. There are entire communities formed around it, like the Lost Media Wiki, for example. Entire channels are dedicated to scouring the internet just to find something like a strange crossover promotional ad between Ed, Edd and Eddy and Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, or an old movie where Batman fights Dracula. Sometimes I find it a bit silly, but it's something that makes people happy. With video, it's much easier to preserve these things. Most computers can play video files. It's easy enough to just share one with other people if you want to stay in circulation. Video games, on the other hand, are a different story. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to video games like there is for videos, which simply need something to be able to play whatever format they're encoded in. Consoles have different form factors from each other. A GameCube controller has analog triggers and buttons in a weird archipelago-esque formation on it, while something like an SNES controller has a much more standard ABXY format for its face buttons and normal bumpers. That's not even to mention the technical capabilities. Some of these consoles, like the PS5, are more powerful than a lot of modern computers that you can buy, so some games are just incompatible with other systems. The most common solution to this is emulation, or when a computer pretends to be a different kind of computer in order to accurately replicate a video game running on it. I'm genuinely shocked at how far this has come. Even some modern consoles like the Nintendo Switch can be effectively emulated now. This does come with some issues, mainly input lag, but it's usually not that noticeable unless you're playing something like a fighting game. However, there is another method of preserving games and bringing them to the next generation, porting them natively. A port of a game is when that game runs on that console, well, natively without it having to pretend to be another console. It's essentially a complete rebuild of that game just for that system. There are usually some tweaks to them, of course, such as the Game Boy Advance versions of the Final Fantasy games adding some extra tedious dungeons and some new abilities to them, which ends up extending the game's playtime even if it's with content that just, well, sucks. Devil May Cry 3's Switch port allows you to switch your style mid-combat, something fans have been mining in for years, which completely changes the flow of the game's combat to focus more about going in and out of different styles. Hell, Shovel Knight has completely different content depending on which port you play. If you're on PC, the Battletoads from Battletoads show up as a boss fight, but on 3DS there's an arena specifically designed to take advantage of the Street Pass functionalities or the usage of player ghosts as enemy. Some ports, however, make some really baffling and strange decisions. I don't think I have to mention the Sonic GBA port, which zoomed in the screen dramatically for some reason. I get that the Game Boy Advance is a small screen, but there were also ports of several other games with the same screen size. Though one of them with that same screen size had a much more strange port in general. One where most of the changes are hard for me to understand. That is the GBA port of A Link to the Past. A Link to the Past is unique among the stable of GBA ports of SNES-era games in a lot of ways. While it does have some of the standard trappings of them, like the Sun Beach color palette and the abysmal sound butchering, there are some other changes that just don't make sense. For one, there's a new translation. I'm not going to say that the old translation was better or anything, because the changes are so minor that I'm not interested in that. But the fact that they bothered to change this at all is really strange to me. Who really cares if the sages are called wise men this time around? Remember, this was before Nintendo started pretending that Zelda was supposed to be some interconnected story. There's simply no reason to try to connect these two things. It's just an odd thing to put the effort in for. Then there is the situation surrounding the shovel. In the original Link to the Past, you get a shovel temporarily as part of the quest to get the ocarina, or the magic flute as it is called in English despite being clearly an ocarina. The ocarina ends up replacing the shovel in your inventory, and to be fair, there's nothing else that you could really use a shovel for in the game. However, in the GBA port, you keep the shovel even after getting the ocarina. Why? I wouldn't be able to tell you. There is nothing else to dig for in the rest of the game. Maybe the extra dungeon, the Palace of the Four Swords, uses it, but I would never know because I couldn't play Four Swords, which came with it on the cartridge due to how prohibitive the process of playing that game is. 4 GBAs, 4 copies of the game, and 4 link cables. No. I also don't know why they load a completely separate 2D Zelda title on here to hang out with Link to the Past. What's the point of including this? The cartoony visual style of Four Swords and its story about Vaati and the Four Sword is completely disconnected from A Link to the Past's darker color palette and story about the Triforce and religion, which is completely separate to Four Swords entirely. Can re-releases stop just including completely separate games, please? It's really weird. The strangest change I saved for last, though. In the original Link to the Past, Link doesn't really make noises when he swings his sword or gets hurt. It's just not really something that he does, and he doesn't need to. In this GBA port, they added the sound clips from Ocarina of Time to all of his actions. Why? No, seriously, why? What's the point of doing this? What does it add to the game? It just makes it a bit noisier and weirder. They went to the effort for some reason. I don't understand this. The A Link to the Past GBA port is the strangest port I've ever played. It's not only just a worse version of the original game like so many of these GBA conversion hit jobs, it also adds weird things that don't make any sense, from some minor translation changes to completely changing the sounds Link makes throughout the game. I will never really understand the point of these choices because now the other Nintendo developed GBA ports really had this many weird choices associated with them. Well, besides Super Mario Bros. 2, kind of. This has been Arcade Everlasting, who thinks the Magic Cave is a cool idea for an item, signing off. Thank you for watching.